climate change.
Climate experts say widespread adoption of cool roof technology will reduce peak temperatures, reduce demand for electricity, and keep carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. For LA This Week, I'm Yana Kay.
The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power is offering special rebates for property owners who embrace cool roof technology. It's a sign of LA's diverse population. The LA Public Library recently reached out to the Armenian community by holding its first ever Armenian Heritage Book Drive at a North Hollywood library branch. Here's Anna Marcos with more.
Time for a little multicultural cuisine and literature, Armenian style. The Armenian Heritage Book Drive at the Valley Plaza branch served up a bookmobile library and an Armenian food truck for those who came in to donate Armenian books.
Each of these branches reflects the unique slice of the city that is that neighborhood. And here in Valley Plaza, this is kind of the center of the largest concentration of Armenian Americans.
The materials collected at the Armenian Heritage Book Drive included books, CDs, DVDs, magazines, and newspapers on the Armenian culture.
All of them have something to do with Armenian themes, correct? Some are in English, others are in Armenian language.
These will help build up the library's Armenian collection.
This is an event that supports the community. We have a large Armenian population here.
Look, he cried. Red feet.
Stories, crafts, music, and dance, much of it from the Armenian point of view, help kids of all ages connect. Because apparently you're never too young to learn cultural diversity. I'm Anna Marcos for LA This Week.
The Valley Plaza Branch Library, by the way, accepts book donations for both its Armenian and Spanish collections, as it serves a large population of both those groups. The planned makeover of the LA Convention Center could be in limbo. One councilman goes to Washington to vie for money for the downtown streetcar and the latest effort to keep television productions from leaving LA. These stories and more in City Beat.
The recent announcement by the owner of Anschutz Entertainment Group, Philip Anschutz, that he would not be selling the entertainment conglomerate, which owns LA Live and Staples Center, is shaking up City Hall, which has been working with AEG to bring an NFL team to Los Angeles. Word is that Anschutz and the NFL are not seeing eye to eye on how best to bring the NFL to LA. AEG CEO Tim Leiweke, who was actively involved in the city's AEG NFL negotiations, also just announced his departure. Now, Councilmember Jan Perry is asking city staff to explore alternatives to ways the convention center can still be upgraded in the absence of an NFL deal. The modernization of the LA Convention Center had been one of the key points in the city's agreement with AEG to build an NFL stadium downtown. Councilmember Jose Huizar has returned from a D.C. trip, rallying support for federal funding for the downtown streetcar. Huizar expressed optimism after his trip, saying the financial commitment secured on the local level makes Los Angeles one of the best candidates in the nation to receive federal funding. The LA City Council recently voted to support Huizar's motion, calling for a 30-year operational plan, which amounts to an allocation of nearly $300 million over 30 years via Measure R. The city's Department of City Planning has been awarded a $4.5 million grant by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority to prepare new transit neighborhood plans for 12 transit stations. The transit neighborhood plans are meant to encourage a more transit-supportive mix of land uses, pedestrian-friendly design, and more transit-sensitive parking requirements. The funding represents the largest single grant ever awarded to the department. Some of the stations that will benefit are along the San Fernando Valley's Orange Line and the Red Line downtown. Attention, Tinseltown, you will no longer get a bill from the city of Los Angeles when you produce TV pilots within city limits. That's the latest incentive approved by the LA City Council in an attempt to stem so-called runaway productions that have in recent years moved to other cities, states, and countries where filming incentives are much more competitive. In 2006 and 2007, Los Angeles was home to 60% of all television pilots. In 2012, only 29% of all television pilots were produced in Los Angeles.
South Los Angeles celebrates the opening of its newest park on 105th Street. And as Gil Reyes reports, park officials aren't stopping there in their quest for more park space.
Children testing out the equipment at their new neighborhood pocket park. 105th Street Park is less than an acre.
Everybody always says to me, well, this is a very small park. Well, these are very small kids, okay? And when you're a small kid, everything is big.
The Department of Recreation and Parks managed to add this bit of park space to South LA where it's sorely needed. The addition's part of the city's 50 Parks initiative.
We're going to get to at least 53 before we stop. We may not stop there.
Locations depend on factors like number of residents below the poverty line and a lack of green space in an area. Planners also consider South LA's high obesity rates. Councilman Bernard Parks hopes people take advantage of the free workout equipment.
This will provide that kind of opportunity to have young people and their families to come here and get the exercise they need.
LED lighting and drought-tolerant plants should keep utility rates low. Donors like First 5 LA have contributed nearly $81 million to the 50 Parks initiative. This is the 10th park to be added in the program. The city hopes to add 6 more parks by July. In South LA, Gil Reyes for LA This Week.
In this week's list of things to do, a free family tour of a museum, an in-depth look into medical marijuana, and a college basketball fan fest.
Come celebrate all things basketball at the LA Live College Basketball Fan Fest Thursday to Saturday, March 28th to the 30th at Nokia Plaza, LA Live. Fans can test their skills and win prizes with basketball competitions on the outdoor regulation-sized court in Nokia Plaza, interact with the latest games, and jam to the top DJs and much more. The event is free and open to the public. There will be photo ops, dance and music performances, and giveaways. For specific times and details, go to lalive.com/collegefanfest. Join the California Science Center for its Science Matters program, a free public adult education series. The one on Saturday, March 30th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. features a panel of experts who will address the complex issue of medical marijuana from a variety of perspectives: medical science, community impact, public policy, and ethics. Marijuana, considered a controlled substance by the federal government, has been decriminalized for therapeutic purposes by some states, including California, leading to conflicts within branches of law enforcement as well as different community interests. The California Science Center is located at 700 Exposition Park Drive. More info can be found at californiasciencecenter.org. The event is free, but you must register online. And if you're looking to hit the museum with your family, head over to the Los Angeles County Museum of Art on Saturday, March 30th at 11 a.m. for a free family tour. The tours are offered every Saturday and led by museum educators. Whether the art is miniature cars zooming through a futuristic city, a 340-ton boulder that you can walk under, or animal avatars from ancient Mexico, your family will learn about and experience the best the museum has to offer. Tours last approximately 45 minutes. LACMA is located at 5905 Wilshire Boulevard. Go to lacma.org for details. And that's a look at some upcoming things to do.
The LA City Council marked St. Patrick's Day with a celebration at City Hall. As Gil Reyes shows us, Irish Americans were honored for years of public service.
City Hall came alive with Irish music and dance to kick off St. Patrick's Day weekend in Los Angeles.
Across this country, the Irish have been on police agencies, fire departments, in city halls, engineers, doing things to help people.
The ceremony honored Irish Americans with close family ties to public service, like LAPD Sergeant Mike Harrington. His father, grandfather, and sister were also police officers.
My wife, Lori, is bomb canine. Her dad's retired out of Newton Division. It always seems to run in families, service and everything, so we're very proud of that.
Thank you. We're very proud of it, too. And my grandfather was a Los Angeles police officer, worked in this building on the 25th floor.
Oh, Danny boy, I love you so.
The singing of Danny Boy here was particularly moving to me. That's what we played at my father's funeral. And it teared me up, and I'm very happy to hear it like this.
Right.
Thank you for the City of Los Angeles for letting me serve you for the last 33 years.
May the wind be always at our back, and may the Lord always hold us in the palm of his hand.
And I shall sleep in peace until you come to me.
I'm Gil Reyes for LA This Week.
Thank you. Happy.
This marked the 137th year the LA City Council has commemorated St. Patrick's Day. It's an annual tradition for the Los Angeles Fire and Police Departments held near St. Patrick's Day, and it's an event that's got folks getting a lot more than just a little trim, all for a good cause.
The St. Baldrick's Foundation's signature head shaving event to raise funds for childhood cancer research has no shortage of willing bodies, or we should say, willing heads. This year's event was held at Fire Station 89 in North Hollywood.
2 days ago, I put on Facebook that I was going to do this. I was going to shave my head, and Hollenbeck, the police family came together, and we were able to raise almost $400 in 2 days.
This is the 10th year the LAPD and the LAFD have hosted this event, and judging from the number of shiny domes, it's a tradition that's not going away anytime soon, even if their hair is.
I think they're looking for over 200 people to come through. I think that's what they had last year, and we're hoping to exceed that today. We'd really like to exceed that today. Their goal is to raise $100,000. It's very difficult, I know, with the economy being the way it is, but with so many people pouring out for such an important cause, I think we can hit that goal.
While the event raises money for childhood cancers, cancer in its many forms has touched the lives of many of the event's participants.
I have a friend back home in Boston, where I'm from. His wife, she just recently passed away of cancer. Her name's Angie Goggin, and I dedicated this to his wife.
Some shavees even made what could have been a hair-raising event into a family affair, bringing their kids along for a much-needed haircut. By event's end, at least 213 people got their heads shaved, raising $90,000 for childhood cancer research.
We should mention, while we didn't get Fire Chief Brian Cummings on camera doing so, he did also have his head shaved. And that's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ellen Chang. A reminder that you could catch us online at lacityview.org. You can also follow and like us on Facebook. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
Did you know you or your family may be eligible to receive as much as $5,800 from the federal government? Learn how you can receive free income tax assistance from certified preparers to apply for the Earned Income Tax Credit. For more information, go to Board of Equalization Chairman Jerome Horton's webpage, which can be accessed at boe.ca.gov. The City of Los Angeles encourages you to make your appointment today at 1-323-980-1221.
Hi, I'm Paul Krikorian. The DWP will soon begin an important project to complete replacement of one of our city's main sources of clean water. The project will begin on March 23rd and will last for about 5 weeks. I know how much this will affect our commute, but this project will give us safe and reliable water infrastructure for the next 100 years. Thank you.
G'day, Troy McCubbin from North Hollywood. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, March 26. I want to welcome everyone to the Los Angeles City Hall Council Chambers. This council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. All are welcome. Madam Clerk, I believe we have a quorum. Could you please call the roll?
Alarcon, Buscaino, Englander, Garcetti, Weezer, Carrasco, Krikourian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Zine, Wesson. 11 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Englander moves. Alarcon seconds. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Krikourian moves. Reyes seconds.
Mr. President, today is Tuesday, and now would be the time for the flag salute.
Okay, if we can ask everyone to please rise for our flag salute will be led today by Mr. Labange.
Thank you. If we could all rise and remove our head cover, place the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Labange. Okay, Madam Clerk, why don't we go through today's agenda?
Item 1 is an item notice for public hearing. The Department of Building and Safety reports that item 1G may be received and filed inasmuch as the lien has been paid.
Okay, without objection, that'll be the order.
And items 1I and J may be received and filed inasmuch as the invoices have been canceled.
Okay, without objection.
And there is request to continue item 1B to April 26.
Without objection. Any cards?
Yes, there are cards.
Okay, let's move on to the next set of agenda items.
Items 2 through 20 are items for which public hearings have been held.
Specials, members, specials. Okay, seeing none. Let Mr. Parks.
11 special.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Could I have number 11 special?
A number 11 special for Mr. Parks. Okay, let's prepare to vote. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
The ordinances will be held over for for 1 week for second reading unless reconsidered.
Okay, and we may make our mark today, and then we'll just reconsider them and vote on them today. So let's go through the next section of items. I believe items 21 through 28.
Items 21 through 28 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, without objection, those items are now before us. Okay. Do we have cards on these items?
Cards on items 21, 26, 27, and 28.
Okay, we'll hold those items. Specials, members. Okay, let's prepare to vote on these items. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, I'm going to ask that we vote on reconsideration for item 15. So this vote will be a vote for reconsideration on item 15. Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, and we'll hold item 15 for Mr. Alarcon. That brings us to what, item 29?
Yes, item 29 is a closed session item. Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
I'll defer to Mr. Krikourian. Are you ready to recommend what we do on item 29?
On the desk for now. Just hold it on the desk for now.
We'll hold that for a bit. That brings us where?
That takes council to items called special.
Okay, item 1. Sean Murphy, please come forward. John Walsh and Dalhouse Dude. Good morning, Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. President. Item 1, I am against all liens because I'm against it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Dude, why don't you come? You could come. You're closer. So come on. Item 1, Mr. Dude.
Yeah. I love speaking on these lien things because what right does the city have to bother everybody with liens? Huh? The city should not be the ruler over the people. The people should be the ruler over City Hall. And see, you got it all backwards. You're putting liens on people, you're taking their homes, blah, blah, blah.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, please come forward on item 1. You're passing? Mr. Walsh passes. Okay, Madam Clerk, if you could open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Well, now, Mr. Walsh, we're going to do item 26. So if you would please come forward on item 26.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org, or for immediate blogging, jwalshconfidential at WordPress.com. This is item 26. This concerns Jackie Robinson Day, which you've held various versions of this in the past. I ask that you invite Bob Bartlett. I don't know if any of you know Bob Bartlett. He's on SCAG. Bob knew, he was much younger, he knew Jackie Robinson. And a lot of people don't realize, but Jackie Robinson's brother only died a few years ago. And I believe there are some survivors left. Why don't you, and Bob Bartlett was a mayor in San Gabriel Valley. Bob Bartlett is a friend of mine. He's one of the few politicians who's a personal friend of mine. So I'd ask you to invite Mr. Bob Bartlett, who can tell you, what it was like when he was a child and Jackie Robinson was an adult. Incidentally, as you know, Herb Wesson has given Garcetti 100%.
There is,
stay off.
He's not talking about this item.
He doesn't have to come here ever.
He's not talking about this item.
John, save that for general public
comment. If it wasn't true, you'd let me say it. If I lie, they let me say it.
Okay. Let's prepare to vote on this item. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay. Now, Madam Clerk, let's vote. If you could read the ordinances, we will vote on reconsideration on the ordinances, and then we'll vote on the ordinances again.
For items 2 and 3.
Okay, let's vote. This vote is for reconsideration on items 2 and 3. Let's open the roll, Madam Clerk. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay, so now that those items are before us, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay, now, Mr. Walsh, we're going to go to 27. Item 27. Yes, sir, Mr. Walsh.
27 is Walk for Kids Day. 100% behind this. Kids are great. I've taught 2 years in Ethiopia kids, 1 year in Saudi Arabia kids, 1 year in New York I taught kids, and a quarter of a century at LAUSD. I'm not one of those guys who just shows up, who lives off the street. Although some of my best friends are street people. See how they don't stop me when I'm off the subject as long as I don't bring up issues that they don't want to hear about?
Please.
HollywoodHighlands.org. I fooled you.
Okay, let's vote on this. Let's open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Item 28, we have Sean and John Walsh. Item 28.
Item 28, I'm for. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Mr. John Walsh.
John Walsh blogging at jwalshconfidential.wordpress.com. Yes, this again is a National HIV/AIDS Awareness Day in the city of Los Angeles. We haven't had as much youth AIDS as other cities, and the reason that is much lower than New York, is that heroin has never been a big drug here. And since HIV is transmitted from a mother to the child by needles, the mother is receiving it through needles. Fortunately, compared to the plague of HIV among children in places like New York, which is much more popular, where killer heroin is much more popular. HollywoodHighlands.org. Thank you.
Oh. Okay, let's prepare to vote. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Now we'll move to item 21. John Walsh, Mr. Dude, Donna Pearman. I have two cards on you, Mr. Dude, so it's Mr. Walsh. We're on 21. Mr. Dude and Donna Pearman, item 21. John, I'm informed you have 1 minute. Yes, sir.
1 minute to live or to speak? This is again about the neighborhood councils. You've been trying to crush the neighborhood councils for quite some time, and this sets them up with checking accounts. You mean the neighborhood council has been given money, for the last 10 or 15 years without a checking account, and suddenly some brain up there decided that maybe it would be a good idea to transfer from various neighborhood council appropriation accounts done to the advocacy account, set up checking accounts pursuant to city policies. John Walsh, you want the truth? Go to HollywoodHighlands.org. Go to jwalshconfidential.wordpress.com.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Pearman, you're there, so you can come up, followed by Mr. Dude.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with this, but I do know that the neighborhood council has been getting a lot of cutbacks each and every time. And it seems like the city council says, and especially the ones running for mayor, saying they want to be able to do things for the neighborhood councils, that they should stop cutting down on this. And it seems like Dunn needs to work with the neighborhood councils, because a lot of the problems are happening because they're not working correctly with each other. So anyway, I hope that the city neighborhood councils don't get cut back any further, and this is just regular policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dude.
Yes, the whole society will be better off run by neighborhood councils, because then we won't need a city hall at all. Zero. But for today, I'm going to be like Hugh Hefner. I'm just going to talk about sex, drug, and alcohol.
Stay on the subject, Mr. Dude.
Oh, that's not the subject? Sex, drugs?
No, come on, stay on the subject.
Okay, neighborhood councils will be able to pave the streets much better than the cities, which are asking for money constantly to fix the streets, and they never fix them. Neighborhood councils would sweep the streets much better than any city, and they would not give you tickets for street sweeping. See? Life would be a lot easier if neighborhood councils run the whole city, because we won't have a bunch of greedy politicians. Some people say bastards, but I don't know if that's a good word to use in city council. Oh, greedy politicians.
Stay on the subject.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. If we got rid of
the subject is on neighborhood councils.
Greedy politicians and we run everything through neighborhood councils, we would do a much better job of having a beautiful city where everybody's peaceful, non-violent, and we would have a clean city, a city that actually runs a lot better than the way we're running it. See? Give everybody a home and let the neighborhood councils run the city.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's vote. Let's open the roll, Madam Clerk. Oh, whoa. Mr. Krikorian, I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just very briefly, I wanted to congratulate the Education and Neighborhoods Committee, Mr. Parks and Dunn, as well, for finally bringing this matter forward. The development of checking accounts for neighborhood councils has been something that neighborhood councils have asked for at least 4 years, I think. We tried to press forward with that, but the Comptroller and the Treasurer's Office had concerns about having non-city employees with signatory authority over checking accounts, but this is obviously the best way to go to increase transparency and to increase accountability in the expenditures that are made by our neighborhood councils. The one thing I wanted to ask Mr. Parks, which I didn't see in my review of this report, Mr. Parks, is one of the things that we had proposed a number of years ago when we were conducting the town hall meetings with the neighborhood councils was that checking accounts would have an electronic platform so that there would be sort of instant transparency when neighborhood councils would write checks, that the public would be able to review those accounts and other members of the neighborhood council would be able to see how the expenditures were being made. It might be that that's still being implemented by Dunn after we pass this policy. I'm assuming that that'll probably be the case, but I just wanted to ask if you knew offhand whether Dunn already has a plan to move forward with creating that kind of visibility for the checking accounts.
I think in the report there it shows that that's what their intent is. Great. And that they will have a monthly auditing versus a quarterly. They will post the checks in the account on the web page for transparency, and but that's the direction that they're headed in. Great. And they want to implement this by July 1st.
So that's terrific. This actually has the result then, members, of increasing transparency on neighborhood council expenditures. It's absolutely the right way to go. Thank you, Mr. Parks.
Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much. I support this, but I'd like to ask the General Manager the table. One of the challenges that I'm finding more and more, Mr. President and my colleagues, is because of the 95 neighborhood councils, the overwhelming task of our city workforce, which has been reduced to liaison on that. How do you see that going forward? And also, I find it very difficult that these meetings go past 10 o'clock at night. I think there should be some guidance on that.
I'm sorry, Council Member. Can you repeat that question?
The difficulty to be able to serve the people with the reduction of general city forces of a variety of departments, and there's 95 neighborhood councils. And how do we do that better? I saw Mike LeGrand here just a minute ago from the planning department. There's 35 planning areas in the city, which is a monumental task. I mean, how are we going to deal with this in a way to be more effective?
Okay.
And what are your thinking as General Manager?
Sure. Gracie Liu, General Manager for the Department of Neighbor Empowerment. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Labange. We currently are restructuring the way that we provide services to the neighborhood councils. We have developed a regional platform that we first developed under Councilmember Krikorian. We were moving forward with that, and in regards to the checking accounts, we wanted to implement that so that we would have more ability for our field staff, who have been pulled from the field to work on funding matters, so that we wanted to free them from that so that we can actually get them back into the field. What we've also done is worked with our neighborhood council board members who've really stepped up while we've received these budget cuts and have had to pull our staff out of the field. They have actually assisted us, and this is the Valley Alliance Neighborhood Councils Resource Board and our Councils for Councils peer mentors. They've really helped us get back out into the community in terms of assisting neighborhood councils.
Right. Mr. President and members, I'm going to ask that we meet. I want to discuss issues. There's the Friends of the Library. How much contact you have with the library? You as General Manager.
Every individual, me as the general manager, go to the Friends of the Library. I have not yet, but we have actually invited the general manager.
Just an example, I got that, but there's the Friends of the Libraries. Every park has an advisory group. Every school has a community advisory council. These things which is so important for citizen participation. So I just want to see them review that to make sure we can tighten it, because the challenge is sometimes people in departments who have the key information are overwhelmed with the assignments and trying to get that out, because information is knowledge is power. So I look forward to meet with you and maybe come back to the council with something that would help further the cause.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you, Councilmember LaBonge.
Mr. Alarcon.
I hope I'm not rehashing something that's already been discussed here, but what was the rationale for why we couldn't carry over money that was, when I was chair of the committee, it was always our impression that the neighborhood council should have the opportunity to engage in longer-term projects that might take 2-3 years, sometimes even 5 years, but they would have to accumulate a significant amount of money. And that would also put them in a position to solicit contributions, but without that ability, there's very limited things they can do, and they have to spend it in a short order. So what was the rationale, and what was the authority for us to say that they can't roll over amounts of money?
So my understanding, this is something that happened before I came on as general manager, but my understanding when the rollover policy was cut was that because of the budget crisis that the city was going through, there was that aspect of not allowing for rollover, an automatic rollover. There was an ability to still encumber funds, however, for long-term projects. And in this current fiscal year, I have suspended the encumbrances only because it has the accounting aspect of it has become really complicated, and I'm trying to basically clean up the existing funding system, not only on the department side, but also for the neighbor council funding side. And once that is complete, and we transition over to the checking accounts, then we can open the encumbrances again for capital improvement projects such as the ones that you mentioned.
And are these actions being challenged by the neighborhood councils?
The rollover policy or the encumbrance policy?
Both.
I believe that they would obviously like the ability to roll over any unspent funds. They do feel that it causes unnecessary spending at the end of the fiscal year. Should they have any extra monies, they kind of just frantically spend it down. So they think that it would be nice to continue the rollover policy as well as encumbrance.
I think it would be nice. There was a story in one of the newspapers recently that suggests that they're ready to sue us. Is that true?
I did read that article, and I have worked with some budget advocates, and my understanding is that they have a concern over the Charter Section 911, in which funds are supposed to be set aside a year in advance for neighborhood councils, and that not necessarily connected to the rollover policy or encumbrances.
Okay. Council members, I hope I'm not stepping out of bounds here, but has the committee had the opportunity to consult with the city attorney on that issue? And I would like to know what the city attorney thinks about the threat of a lawsuit relative to the item that was in the newspaper recently. And if not, I would like to have the city attorney brief us at some point, not necessarily today, but and I don't have any problem with trying to clean up the accounting system. It's been screwed up since day one, but I would like to have the city attorney at some point advise us as to any potential liability with regard to the charter section that was set up. I can tell you that the neighborhood council is not operating the way that I voted for it to operate when I supported the charter changes.
Look at your time, Mr. Alarcon.
And before
that's your job.
Before Mr. Martinez,
you're over.
You say no.
So answer his question.
Before Mr. Martinez begins, if there is a genuine threat of litigation, then perhaps the questions and answers could be posed and answered in an appropriately agendized closed session in the future. However, I think Mr. Martinez could answer a certain amount in open session right now.
Yeah, yes, certainly. I would just point out that there has been a concern raised with some of the accounting practices. We'd certainly be happy to come back, and again, I'm sorry, Darren Martinez, Deputy City Attorney. We'd certainly be happy to brief council on these issues as well as brief the committee if they're interested in the item further. You know, at best right now, it's just a simple threat against the accounting practices that the city has engaged in historically.
Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you. I don't want to go too much into the encumbrance issue. It's not exactly on this agenda item, but Mr. Eloquent, I think there's one short answer to your question was many of the encumbrances that many of the neighborhood councils had thought that they had encumbered were not adequately documented at all within Dunn's system, and vice versa. And so I think one of the important things was to have a clean slate of actually knowing what was encumbered and what was not. The second point is that many of those encumbrances, if they weren't specific, if they didn't have a real purpose, in the same way that the city's departmental budgets have encumbered funds that we then in the budget process disencumber. It was the same kind of process there. So that's why that was important to do. I did just want to respond also to Mr. Labange's point about the reduction in staff that Dunn has had, because we know that Dunn has been cut probably as much or more as any other department in the city in its number of personnel. And this measure that's before you today to initiate the checking account process will actually greatly assist Dunn in its oversight role, because each neighborhood council will have a simple check writing process. They don't have to go through Dunn for every payment request and so on. So it will reduce their workload by having checking accounts that will be accessible and visible to the public, so that there will be peer review and public review of what they're spending their money on, and it won't need as aggressive an oversight and auditing role by Dunn. So I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Rosendahl.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why are we doing this? Explain.
Sure. So we've been reviewing the funding program for a long time now for neighborhood councils, and it is a burdensome, unsustainable system. And particularly with the staffing cuts that we've had, actually when we were at full staffing with over 50 people, we couldn't even maintain this funding program. There were delays in payments, missing documents.
So it becomes more convenient for them?
Number one, yes, that's convenience for them, for the neighborhood councils, and also on the staffing side for the department.
And then also the visibility of writing the check, that you have a record of it and it's clear.
Correct.
Are any neighborhood council people upset about this? Want more vetting, community meetings over it, or they all say it's a no-brainer?
I have gotten both sides. Some people are more concerned, like in terms of the safeguards, and we will be developing more safeguards in the month of April. But for the most part, neighborhood councils seem to be thrilled.
They're okay with it?
Yes.
Okay, and you're not talking funding levels or any of that at this point?
No, I'm just talking about a system that's sustainable for both the neighborhood councils and the department.
Okay, so first of all, it'll be good visibility. We'll have clarity on it. Neighborhood council people like it because it'll be more convenient rather than dealing with trying to get a check out of you and all that kind of thing. So there's accountability, there's the convenience, and it makes sense. I'm just curious, who has been against it from the neighborhood councils, and for what reason?
I think it's just individuals who have expressed concern in regards to accountability, and I've told them that actually this provides for more accountability, because currently the way the system is running, we are unable to do the audits that we are supposed to be doing, and we don't know how some of those public funds are being spent.
Great. Well, I appreciate your leadership on it and making this suggestion. It seems like it makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Council Member.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you. Next speaker, Councilmember Englander.
Thank you very much. I support the ability for them to write checks easier and have more access. The system is so complicated and overloaded, and your staff is understaffed. But with that, neighborhood councils are required to submit annual audits now. Is that correct?
They are supposed to submit audits on a quarterly basis.
Quarterly basis.
Correct.
How many, and we have what, 95 or 96 total
95
certified?
neighborhood councils.
95 right now. And how many of those 95 are actually in compliance with the current audit requirements?
We have 35 in compliance as of Friday. I expect that by April 1st, I will have more, but only recently was I able to get an updated list of which neighborhood councils were in compliance with the quarterly audits, and at the time that we released that initial report, 71 were not in compliance.
Okay.
We're now down to 60.
Here's Mr. Krikorian, and I'm not sure if this could be a friendly amendment or if it's something, or it's to Tom's? Bernard? Mr. Parks, if this could, well, I'll work my way around the horseshoe till I figure out who's the author. Mr. Parks, or at least it wasn't over here, because there you go. I don't. This might or might not be a friendly suggestion and or amendment, but if there are 71 neighborhood councils not in compliance with the auditing requirements, it's certainly a little bit of a concern, and maybe perhaps as an incentive to, and if there's a way to do this where they could take over this new system only and maintain that and have that ability to write checks only if, in fact, they're in compliance with their audit requirement. And I don't know if those two should be married or not. I'm just throwing out for conversation. But it might be an incentive to get those 71 up to speed and get their audits turned in. I know we had a couple neighborhood councils, one in particular in my district, that got in some pretty bad hot water for the way they were spending some of the money on stuff. So if there's a way to look at that.
The reason that she's recommending July 1st, it starts with the new allocations. Right. And on a monthly basis, they will not get an additional allocation unless they have reconciled their account.
Unless they're up to speed. So that's part of this already.
That's part of this.
Yes.
And so the ones that then also starting July 1st, those 71, those would be put on hold as well and frozen until their audits were turned in? Is that correct?
I can't maintain two systems only because of the staffing issues. So what we're doing is we're trying to get them in compliance literally within the next couple months to get everybody in compliance. So by April 1st, those 60 neighborhood councils that have not submitted their quarterly reconciliations, their funds will be frozen, and they will not be able to spend down for the rest of the fiscal year until they come into compliance.
But my question is then, starting July 1st, when this would take effect, assuming there may be a few that are still out of compliance, what happens with them?
Their funds will be held until, and their checking account system would not. It would be set up, but they would not be able to access those funds. Yes.
And that would be reevaluated every quarter as those are due as well.
Right. So we're changing this quarterly system to a monthly system because by the time we were getting a quarterly, we couldn't.
Late.
Yeah, it's too late. So we wouldn't be going to a monthly reconciliation system, and as Councilmember Parks stated, if they don't turn in those reports, then they will not receive the next allocation.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next speaker, Councilmember Zine.
Good morning.
Good morning, Councilmember.
Has anyone said you're doing a good job? I will say that because I think you've taken the bull by the horns, as they say, to make it work proper for neighborhood councils. What seems to be the biggest problem when it comes to the neighborhood councils following the rules on the expenditures, on the reports that are required? When you have so many that are out of compliance, what is the problem that they can't comply with the rules that are universal to the system?
I think it is actually on the department side. We just don't have the staffing to follow up with some of the neighborhood councils when they turn in things late, and I think when they do turn things in, we don't even get a chance to even look at it because we just don't have the staffing to do it. And I think that to them, with their volunteer hours, I think there's a thought that why am I bothering turning this in if no one's even going to look at this? So I think it's more of a staffing issue on the department side.
A staffing issue on the city side.
Correct.
Because I know that attending that meeting that they had Valley Alliance with all the neighborhood councils that were in attendance, they were circulating a petition about the $50,000 allocation for the different programs, which they're adamant to do the community programs, and community programs are obviously important. We want to support them, but the fact is when we're not getting compliance because of the city side, how do we rectify it other than more city personnel, which obviously we have a problem with the budget? How do we rectify that with a streamlined process, an online process, some type of innovation that we can get more in compliance? It's like when you go to school and everyone fails the class. There's a problem with either the teacher or the subject. Everyone shouldn't be failing, and we've got an inordinate number of folks in this particular situation who are not compliant with those rules.
I think you just stated it, Council Member. We do need to innovate by putting a streamlined, easy-to-use process on the neighbor council side and on the department side, and split the job of the payments to the neighbor councils so that they handle their own payments, whereas the department can then focus on audits. We don't have enough staffing to do both at this point.
And until we fix that, we're going to continue having this problem with lack of compliance.
We will. We will likely have it, or there'll be one aspect that suffers. Either people being compliant and there being no support on the field for meeting operations for neighborhood councils because we've pulled back all the field folks to do funding, or we won't have any compliance. Basically, kind of like what we're having right now, which is semi-compliance while we're trying to get neighborhood councils back in line.
Because we created neighborhood councils to bring them into the fold of the city. The operation, being a former charter commissioner, the intention was to have them a part of the system so they wouldn't feel disconnected and they would be a part of it. And I'm sure the frustration they feel that their money's being cut off and this and that and the other, that we're trying to be part of the system, and bureaucracy is holding us up from trying to do what we want to do, from the business community, from the residential community, from the stakeholder community, which creates frustration for them. Then they throw in the towel and say, hey, it's not working. When we want it to work, we want to sustain it for the betterment of Los Angeles. So I support you in what you're trying to do. I know you're very committed to it, and it's a challenging task. The budget's going to be coming up shortly. Hopefully we'll have the resources to address it so we can get this done, and we don't continue to linger 10 years later trying to get it on the right track.
Thank you, Council Member. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councilor Parks for second time and Councilor Labange.
Thank you very much. Gracie, I want to thank you for your efforts on this and the other things that you're doing with neighborhood councils. And I think it's important that we emphasize that we're moving a lot of administrative workload off your department because of the shortage of personnel, but we're also holding neighborhood councils responsible for their actions and their decisions by them producing work that they're responsible for. And you may want to comment on that, of just what the condition was when you took over and the tremendous amount of paperwork that went unreviewed during that time, which bogged the whole system down.
That's correct. When I started in August, we were initially just looking at elections, just finishing up the neighborhood council elections, but when we were finally able to turn to the neighborhood council funding system, I had to hire a 120-day hire from Controller's Office in order to even catch up on the audits. We were quite behind. I didn't even have a number as to how many neighborhood councils were behind. It took a couple months to figure this out, and once we did come up with 71 neighborhood councils being behind in audits, some of them like behind years behind. And so we have created a system in which they can catch up, and more importantly, the last 2 quarters that they catch up on those specifically. And so they have been, trying their hardest to do that. And now that they know that, we are catching up on the department side, they've been very happy to try to do their part as well. Yeah. So it's been very good to work with them that way.
Could you also comment on the system you set up about communicating directly with them now that they have their own emails?
Yes. So thanks to Education Neighborhoods and your leadership, we did go ahead and set up that email system so that every neighborhood council would have an email address that we control on the department side, and that email address goes to for each neighborhood council goes to every neighborhood council board member. It's the first time we've had an updated roster in at least 7 to 8 years, and we are tying the updating of that roster to the funding program because, you know, the neighborhood council board members are voting on public funds, and we need to know who they are.
Okay. And the final question I have is, would you comment on the fact is what you found in evaluating the funding and the encumbrances? I believe there's a shortfall of $700,000+ that is in the system because of the prior accounting system?
Yes, thanks to the controller, CAO, and CLA, they've been very helpful in helping us to identify this potential shortfall of $700,000 to $1 million because of, as Councilmember Kokori mentioned, the inaccuracy of the way that we were tracking the encumbrances. We are trying to resolve it this fiscal year, and it looks like we can. So we are making sure that when we start this new neighborhood council funding system on July 1st, hopefully, that we will have a clean slate and everyone will be caught up, both on the department side and on the neighborhood council side.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Labange.
I just wanted to say it didn't happen for 7 years until you came on scene and got it organized. It's very important to get it organized. I know there was great faith as we started this program, but you have to have discipline in order to be successful in that way. So I appreciate you and your staff doing that. And I'd like to continue the discussion, so I think it's been healthy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Labange.
Thank you. That concludes all the speakers. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay, that matter is done. Congratulations. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, our next item, we'll move to item 29. I believe Councilmember Krikorian, item 29. Are we ready?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a settlement of a series of EEOC claims. I believe it can be resolved in open session unless members have particular concerns or questions. We have heard these matters in previous reports, and the Budget and Finance Committee recommends approval of the settlement recommendations.
Councilor Krikorian, we do have, I believe Mr. Walsh submitted a card, but he's out of time. And we do have Dollhouse Dude on this item. We already had a hearing, so we don't have to have the hearing. So let's move forward with...
If we could just, since it is a personnel-related matter, can we just make sure no council member wants to discuss this in closed session?
I was about to ask that question. You beat me to the punch. Good job. Are there any questions regarding this matter? Seeing no one on the speaker queue, let's open the roll.
Excuse me, Mr. President. The motion before them is for the case entitled EEOC Claims of Delisa Davies and Alicia Mathis, Fire Department. There is a recommendation to award $325,000 in settlement for the EEOC claim of Delisa Davies and to award $50,000 in settlement for the EEOC claim of Alicia Mathis.
Okay. Still see no questions. All right, no questions on the matter. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
It's forthwith. Councilor Parks? I'm sorry, Councilor Parks, let's start all over because let's make sure your mic is on. Please, go ahead.
Okay. Could get item 1A reconsidered because building and safety needs a 30-day period to resolve some issues.
Let's open the room for reconsideration. Did you have on the same item?
Before we reconsider 1A, can we add 1C to that as well? And I'm going to need they'll need 2 weeks on that particular matter.
Okay. So let's open the roll for reconsideration on 1A and 1C. Let's open the roll, close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay, so let's open up the roll for reconsideration on 1A and 1C. Let's close the roll. We'll tabulate the vote. Let's continue both.
So the request is to continue item 1A for 30 days. That's till April 26th. And for C for 2 weeks, and that would be till April 9th.
Okay. Let's open the roll on these two items. Let's close the roll. Without objection, Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Okay. We do have items 11 and 15. Are either council members ready for those two? Otherwise, we can go to general public comment. Okay, don't see anyone prepared, so let's go to general public comment. We have Sean.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. President. Want to wish everybody, my fans, a happy Easter and a Good Friday. We need to keep the parks open, the libraries open. That's it. And come here to St. Charles Choir during Holy Week. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Donna Proman. General public comment.
I want to tell everyone happy Passover. It's Passover right now. Anyway, the neighborhood, I know the Van Nuys Neighborhood Council is trying to tell you it's trying hard to comply. Too bad the city council can't be audited the same way. Come on, folks. Dennis Zine for controller. He has the expertise to do it right. Derek Galecko for CD6 and Eric Garcetti for mayor. Please, Garcetti, come back to the council. We don't need you. You can come over here and not campaign all the time. Anyway, everyday Van Nuys video conference is closed is a victory for Matt Dowd, a vulgar cynic who sweared quite often and replied that we're glad we were shut off. We spoke on matters important to the city in a clean, diplomatic way. Matt Dowd did not. Reopen Van Nuys video conferencing and don't let him win. News. Wendy Gruhl is now going to be advised by Richard Reardon. I asked the city employees, do you really want Reardon policies to be used? Do you really want everything on the table? Miriam said, how about a combination Social Security and pension for new employees only so they can be funded 100%? Federal employees did that over a decade ago. It can come up with solutions. We don't need Wendy Gruhl's everything on the table except DWP, of course. City employees, really study what each person stands for. Don't listen to your unions. They're not always for your interests. Listen to your own conscience. And I feel you will vote for Eric Garcetti, who again has time and time again has tried to come up with compromises. As I said, Derek Galecko for CD6, he's lived all his life in Van Nuys. We need some people in Van Nuys, our lead of Panorama City. You need somebody that's lived all your life there and not just a carpetbagger who come at the last moment from San Fernando. Anyway,
thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at jwalshconfidential.wordpress.com. That's what it looks like, and at hollywoodhighlands.org, where you find our endorsements. We're still endorsing Zine, but our endorsement is getting a little wobbly. Okay, Garcetti, where is he? He hasn't been here for 3 weeks. He's paid to come here. I call the city clerk. We have nothing to do with it. Ask Herb. I send Herb a letter, Herb Wesson, and suddenly he doesn't speak English, only Ebonics. I'm asking Herb. Herb shows up for 15 minutes, goes in the back room, smokes a pack of cigarettes, goes home. And he damn well doesn't have his son drive him home because his son can't drive a car since his drunk driving conviction. That's what's happening. I'm telling every black person in this city that Mr. Garcetti is the worst person you could have as mayor. The worst person. Everyone, and Bill Clinton, once Bill Clinton blessed Wendy Gruhl, the election is over. I'm telling you, the election is over. We're going to have an historic moment. For the first time, black, white, or brown, it's a woman in office. It's a woman in office, and we are incredibly, incredibly happy. And Garcetti right now is being paid $160,000 not to show up, and there isn't one person. The city clerk washes her hands of it. This guy up here Why isn't he here? And where is the LA Times? I'll tell you where the LA Times is. Garcetti flirts with Kate Linthicum, flirts with Sennheiser, flirts with all the reporters, and they get all gushy inside, and they don't do their job. Miss Linthicum, I know you're a rock and roller and a druggie, but I know that's what you are. But
thank you very much.
HollywoodHighlands.org.
Next two speakers, Dollhouse Dude and Mr. Bob Cooper.
Well, I'm going to step aside from all this mess. I supported Garcetti, and I got thrown out of his party for looking homeless and Mexican, he says. I'm just going to ask, hey, Hugh Hefner, are you watching? I want to inherit the Playboy Mansion because I can take care of the girls. You're getting too old, buddy. Huh? Hugh, I'm wearing your robe already.
This has no jurisdiction with the city, what he's talking about.
It's my public comment. Oh, he lives in Beverly Hills. I understand. You don't rule Beverly Hills. Anyway, my point is this. Why don't we all have a mansion? What in the heck is wrong with us? You know, all the birds have a place to live. All the wolves have a place to live. All the bears have a place to live. Are we stupider than any of those animals? Yes, we are. Because we're greedy bees. I don't want to say the word bastard because it may be misunderstood. You know, bastard is the son of an unmarried father or mother. Is that what it is? Anyway, I'm saying to you, if we provide housing for everyone, if we find a real way to do it, I have some ideas. You can consult me. You can read my book and modify it. If we do that, we will start a better society. We will not have all these greedy bees. Hey, Hugh Hefner, can I have your mansion, please? Huh? I'll take care of your girls.
He is not within the jurisdiction of the city right now.
I am?
Thank you very much. Mr. Bob Cooper.
Good morning, gentlemen. Bob Cooper. Listen, you know what's happening to me, each and every one of you. You've got one of the officers out there, African-American sergeant out there, had boarded up my building, boarded up my office, taken all of my equipment, machinery, business, just shut me down like he's the law. And what is this? I don't have a place to stay. I've got heart problems on account of you people. You people could give me a place to stay. You throw me out of my office, take over my bank accounts, scare my wife out of our marriage. You know, what is this? Who's the enemy here? I'm not your enemy. I don't have a criminal record at 70 years old. You could at least give me the respect and have someone talk to me about this problem. I don't have to come here down here 2 and 3 years to find out that you people are all off into my business, calling yourself secondary owners. Hey, I've had money before. I don't go crazy over it. You can take what you want to. Just leave me and my family alone. Let us do business, due process in this country. You got people in here blocking telecommunications, mail, anything. I can't even get a message out to my family. What's going on? When did I get to be the enemy? I'm 70 years old and I don't have a criminal record. I've never spent 30 days in jail in my life. I'm an artist, as I've told you before. They're marketing my products and services all over the world, putting the money in their pockets. That's involuntary servitude. You're a violation of federal laws this time. I'd appreciate it if you get some of your constituents to talk to me about my problem. I'm a human being. I know black is not in this year.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I believe we are ready with item 15. Councilor Alarcón.
Item 15.
15.
Yeah, council members, item 15 is regarding increasing the licensing fee for horses by $3. The concern I have on this is that it has not been considered by the Equestrian Advisory Committee, and I believe that it should be, as well as neighborhood councils. So all I'm asking to do with this is to refer it back to committee to also direct them to get information from the Equestrian Advisory Committee as to their feelings on this issue. And then thirdly, because we had just modified the equestrian fees with regard to multiple years and discounts, I wanted to get a report as to what has happened since we did that, whether we have seen the increase that we predicted or not. And so those are the three actions, and they're circulated in a paper motion that you should have at this point. So with that, I would ask for your support to send this back to committee for further consideration.
Thank you, Councilor Alarcon. City Attorney, since we have that request, we do have one card on this item. I know we're working with an amendment. Do we still have the public hearing on this? Okay. So we do have one card. Juan Dollhouse Dude, are you here?
I just came back to say goodbye. I don't need your city council BS.
Thank you. Okay. Now, is there a second to Councilor Alarcon's motion? We do. It's already a written motion. All right. So I see no other speaker on the queue on this item. Let's open the roll to send this back to committee. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
And that item is adopted as amended by motion 15A.
Thank you. Okay, are we ready with the next item?
The mini motion is being circulated as we speak.
Okay.
Item 11 called special by Councilmember Parks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I ask Miguel to come up and kind of explain your report? It looks like one of your famous warning reports.
No, famous or infamous, rather. Miguel Santana, CAO. Following the election, we were directed to provide an update on our budget situation, both for this year and for next year. In there, we highlight three main points that we stated in our City at a Crossroads report that we had presented back in February. The first thing is that the good news is that we're starting to see some of the fruit of our labor pertaining to pensions. And so next year, we're anticipating about a $45 million less contribution than what was previously projected. We're still going to have to pay more, but now we won't be paying as much. Back 4 years ago, we assumed that pension costs were going to grow up to about 15% each year on average. They're now about 10 to 11%. The second thing that we talk about is the fact that revenues are trending upward. The economy is improving. The unemployment rate is declining. We're seeing increases in our hotel tax, in our property tax, in our sales tax. And then the third bit of good news is that due to the discipline of the Budget and Finance Committee and your council and the mayor, we're hoping to have a budget stabilization fund of approximately $70 to $80 million for next fiscal year. Again, as a reminder, this is one-time money that we shouldn't anticipate the following year unless budgeted. The challenges are that while our revenues are increasing, our expenditures are still increasing at a faster rate. So for every dollar of new revenue that we have, it gets eclipsed by the increases in our expenditures, and that trend line continues to grow and projected to grow in the future. So we're still seeing a structural deficit for fiscal year 13-14 and beyond. The deficit will ultimately be reset once the mayor's budget is released and your council considers it, and then back to the mayor. We only define the deficit once a year. That's important because our bond rating agencies and investors and the public rely on that definition. There are changes that occur throughout the year, like the ones I just mentioned, that could result in the deficit being altered almost on a monthly basis, but we try not to do that. What this report does, it both emphasizes what good news we do know, but also issues a cautionary note, as Mr. Parks started off with, in that while the city will have some one-time revenue, we are recommending that we use as much of that one-time revenue for one-time expenditures. And that now that the voters have made a determination about Measure A and the need for any new additional revenue beyond those that we are naturally getting, the city needs to engage in the process of eliminating the structural deficit on our own. We're proposing that when you consider the budget, that the goal should be to have 70% of the deficit resolved with ongoing revenue and ongoing reductions and solutions, and that only 1/3 of the deficit be dealt with one-time solutions. And the reason that is that as more and more of the solutions that are ongoing will result in reducing the structural deficit for the following years, which unfortunately we continue to see to grow. We do give some broad recommendations, including having a discussion of our labor costs at ERC, which we do on an ongoing basis. We just had one this morning to address the biggest drivers in our deficit, which includes our pension costs, workers' compensation, and health care. And then, obviously, as part of the budget process, you'll consider efficiencies, consolidations, and possible reductions to ultimately reach a balanced budget. So with that, I'll be happy to respond to any questions.
Councilor Parks?
Good. Thank you very much. One of the things, if you could look at your report on page 1, the last paragraph, it's the clearest explanation that I've seen that we've given as to what one-time money does to the budget. Could you reemphasize exactly what that sentence means? It's, what you said, in other words?
So to emphasize the need to adopt ongoing solutions, we say, in other words, every dollar of one-time revenue that is used to solve the fiscal year 13-14 projected deficit will result in increasing the deficit for the following year. Moreover, every dollar of ongoing revenue used to solve the deficit will reduce the structural deficit the following year.
Okay, so the key for this coming year budget is what percentage of one-time money and how it's used.
That is correct. And so we're recommending that 70% of the deficit be addressed with ongoing solutions, both in terms of revenue, which, as I indicated, we're seeing projected out, increasing, as well as other savings and opportunities to provide ongoing solutions.
Okay, and then also in your report you say that we're showing some benefits of the changes in the pension fund, but it's still growing. So I guess it's growing at a decreasing rate.
That is correct. Our pension costs are unfortunately still growing. The other big piece to reducing our pension costs is the full implementation of the new civilian tier, which becomes effective July 1st. It is the law of the land based on the adoption of your council and the mayor. And so we won't really know exactly how that's going to provide savings. We know based on the actuarial analysis that was required prior to adoption that over 30 years it will provide a savings of $4 billion. And so the full implementation of that July 1st would obviously help reduce that growth even more.
Okay, the other question I have is that one of the big misconceptions is that we constantly talk about this fiscal year is about $200 million shortfall, but the key is if you project it out 5 years, we're still approaching $1 billion. So that $1 billion 5 years ago, we've dropped it to $200 million, but we still are facing $1 billion over the next.
Right, the cumulative deficit continues to grow. Currently, it's at $327 million for fiscal year 14-15, $297 for 15-16, and $265 for fiscal year 16-17. So the reason why Measure A was important, because it provided us additional revenue that would be ongoing to reduce that deficit, not just for next year, but frankly, it was more important for the outer years. Now that that isn't an option, then the only other solutions we have is to continue to grow the economy as well as to make ongoing reductions.
Okay. Colleagues, I submitted a amending motion for, excuse me, 14A, because in your report you specifically asked for ideas.
Yes.
So I'm submitting that and hope that you can review those and comment and cost them out. We're not asking for debate on any one of the specific items, just asking that we get some kind of report back to tell us if any of them are reasonable that fits into the 13-14 budget. So that's item 11A.
Okay. We do have a couple of more. Councilor Labange, Councilor Kokorian.
This work by Mr. Parks, I don't agree with some of the things, but some are good ideas. Could you do this by letter? If I send you a letter and copy my colleagues, will that have suffice, or does this have more weight? Do I need to come with a motion?
Mr. Parks has already submitted a letter, and we're working on that now. What this allows is for the analysis to be done and presented to your full council for consideration.
Right. So how much more work will be if you have 15 different motions with ideas? How do you rate them out?
You know, we one at a time. I mean, we get through them. I mean, through this motion, we will respond to each one of the questions raised and then submit a report to your council.
Right, because I was studying other municipalities within the county of Los Angeles, and some have, 14 departments, and some have 24 departments, or whatever the case may be. I know you've made an effort to try to look at some consolidations. Are you looking at any consolidations now?
Well, there's certainly the consolidation that the CLA and I are recommending to create a Department of Economic Development, consolidating various functions that are currently throughout the city into one department to strengthen that function. There are other ideas that are being considered now by the mayor's office and will be presented as part of his budget.
Yeah, but I would just like to look at some of those things. Sometimes, I know the Parks Department is very challenged and stressed right now. They have engineers in there. Should they go back to the Bureau of Engineering? Should the Bureau of Engineering be the one person there? Does contract administration need to be a separate department or be mixed within building and safety to do work or compliance, or the Bureau of Engineering? Does sanitation need to be its own department? Should they collect trash 4 days a week and take 580 trucks off the street and reduce that pollution and have it done Tuesday through to Friday, and some of these things here? So I think what it would be, Mr. President, if I put a motion like this just goes right to your committee, and then you can look at those ideas in earnest and come back, because I've said some of these things at all. And absolutely, street cleaning should go to the Bureau of Sanitation or what is there. It's horrible to drive by the drains to see them packed up because of all the debris that finds its way through the curb, because when it's in the curb, it goes down the drain. When it goes down the drain, it goes into the river. And all that can be eliminated, I think, with better coordination and looking at these. Everybody, it's nice if everything's good. I remember pre-78 days, because I worked here in pre-78 in 76, 77, and we did everything for everybody. We got cats out of trees, but now we can't get people out of trees. And some people are in trees and need the help. We can't trim the trees. Trees are blocking the signals, which is another challenge. The trees did not get the memo to stop growing. So we got to get tree trimming back. All these things are important. I thank you, Mr. President, and Mr. Santana, you and your staff, I thank you. And partnerships is the key. It's real key if we're going to work to the future, whether it's at the zoo or the convention center or the libraries, everything is with the school district partnerships.
Okay, Councilor Labange. Councilor Kokorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I agree conceptually with Mr. Parks' motion. I think that the items that are identified in here are worthy of consideration and report back. I think the more consideration we give to legitimate ideas for cost reduction, the better. And the more transparent we are about that and the more we have a discussion about that, the better. So I want to support this motion, but Mr. Parks, if I may, the only concern I have about this is because we have about 21 items that we're asking for the CAO to report back, and I think we should get reports back on every one of those 21 items. It's a small point, but the introductory paragraph already sort of passes judgment on these items by indicating that they would reduce the city's debt burden and concentrate. I don't think that was the intent, but But if we could just strike that language and make it including the following concepts which have been submitted to the CAO for evaluation, we'll let the CAO make a recommendation about whether it'll relieve the city's debt burden and build a reserve fund and so on. I mean, I think that's the point of this, is to get the information back before the council so that the council can consider it. And it may be a semantic point, Mr. Parks, and I don't mean to pick on semantics, but I just don't want to put the cart before the horse by having the council vote that these are beneficial concepts before we've actually heard the report.
Okay. Read the motion, you'll see that the CAO created a report and asked for options to do certain things.
Right.
And we quoted what he asked those options because he's concentrating on A through J. We just gave him some ideas and suggestions, so we're just quoting out of his report. No. We're not saying, they said we have the following suggestions we're submitting for the report that he published.
I get that, but it says including the following concepts which would, and then you go through A through
I know, but that comes out of his report.
Would a simple...
But we don't know that those concepts would meet those.
Would a simple solution be to simply say options or which may include the following?
Yeah, but it also comes out of your
Parks,
report,
can we do this? Councilor Parks, we do have Councilor Rosendahl on the queue. Maybe
I'd be prepared to support this if it merely said including the following concepts, and then just have the list.
Well, perhaps both of you can work that out as we get back to the floor. Okay. Thank you. Councilor Rosendahl.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
Tell me, I saw where our President of the Council is talking about, or the Mayor is talking about, a special committee that would be an oversight committee that begin to look at everything. Mickey Canner, former Secretary blah blah, will be on it, and all kinds of other folks who have an understanding and appreciation. There might be some union people, some business people. There's this effort to take a hard look, not only scrubbing the numbers, but thinking out of the box. Are you familiar with this, and who's going to be on it? That's the real story for me today.
No, I'm very familiar with the committee that will be headed by Mr. Cantor. I think it's a great idea. I think to the extent that there's a more public discussion about these issues to provide a better understanding of what our challenges are and an honest assessment of what we've done and how we move forward. Mr. Cantor has asked me to submit a presentation to that committee early on so that to help frame some of these issues, which we will do. And so I think it's a good way of bringing civic leaders into the debate.
I appreciate you saying that because I'm very excited about it. I thought that was just brilliant. Well, what do you think of this motion that Mr. Parks is circulating? I'd like your opinion of it.
I think I think we're at a point now that we have to, again, put everything on the table and examine every idea. Ultimately, your council and the mayor will make a determination whether the idea will move forward. It's no different than what we did 4 years ago, and every year submit an annual report with a series idea. So we will look at each one of these concepts, provide an independent analysis as to whether or not they could be implemented, what the potential savings would be if they were, and then your council will have an opportunity to debate them. I could guarantee that these things won't be all solved and discussed in year one. We have a projected deficit for the next several years, so I'm sure there'll be elements of this.
So this is part of our homework. This is part of our exploring.
Fact-finding.
And Mr. Parks is just putting more on the table for us to do our homework with, which is what we should do.
That's right.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Rosendahl. Santana, when we were going through some of the toughest times and we were concerned about the credit ratings and how we were going to be perceived back east, when you spoke of our increasing revenues, yet the debt is overshadowing those revenues, how does that place us given the challenges we had before with our credit rating and the effect that it would have on our ability to use resources to keep the city going?
I was in San Francisco last week. I was meeting with actually bond rating agencies and investors. They asked me to go up in part to give them an update at post-election. We certainly had talked about Measure A as being a potential solution to help reduce that deficit. They were now curious to see now that it hasn't passed. I think the most important thing, we're in a very important, sensitive time right now. I think what they're hoping to see is that the city's efforts to engage in reform, to eliminate the structural deficit, to build and maintain the reserve fund, and to manage our finances is going to be looked at even under greater scrutiny over the next 6 months and next year, in light of the fact that one major solution that we have proposed is no longer on the table. And so really, the ball is now officially back in our court to try to solve. They're going to ask, once you're at the end of your budget process, the question that will be asked is, was this a kick-the-can budget? Did you simply paper over the deficit with one-time money and one-time fixes? Or did you still continue the difficult work of reducing the ongoing deficit so that you're building on the increases in revenue that are resulting from the improved economy? And so the outcome of that answer will determine ultimately how well we do in the market.
Thank you. Councilor Alarcon, you're on the queue.
Some of these proposals are extreme to say the least, and as you explained, you can always consider these things in the course of your job title. I see no need to put them in the form of a motion, particularly when many of these items are very controversial, and to support them would give an impression that to support this motion would give an impression that we somehow support the substance of each proposal. I can't support this motion. There are several issues here that are vague. One in particular that stands out to me: reduce full-time city worker positions where appropriate to part-time positions. I've heard recently that somebody's calling for the part-time city council. Does that include that group? It's very vague as to what is included in that concept. It seems to me that it's part and parcel of your function to create strategies to reduce DWP salary and pension costs. I mean, that goes without saying. Freeze hiring citywide, stop filling critical vacancies. We've set up a whole process for evaluating each and every position. To just do it unilaterally, I think, could be very damaging to the services that our constituents are entitled to. I can't support this, and I would urge my colleagues to be very wary about these kinds of proposals. If you have a specific motion, then introduce it. But to throw out all of this in the middle of a mayor's election is really, I think, is moving how the City Council considers items in the wrong direction. There is a budget process. We should respect it. I don't believe that these kinds of changes would cause tremendous upheaval in the city. And if anything, we need to unify our business, labor, city, constituent issues, and I believe this will create a tremendous division where we're already struggling to keep this city unified. So I urge your no vote on item 11A and allow the CAO to do his job independent of these kinds of motions.
Thank you, Councilmember Parks.
Yeah. I'd just like to reiterate, Mr. Krikorian, if it makes you feel better, we can use the word may instead of would.
That's fine.
Okay, and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sixth sentence, it says which would, we could say which may, which doesn't make the city CAO less objective. And then the other issue, I think what's important is the last sentence where we said these suggestions are being submitted for evaluation, comment, and analysis. And Mr. Santana, is it your expectation that this does not approve any of these? This just gives you the ability to bring back the answers that you would have normally just brought to me because of my letter?
That's correct.
So the whole council gets to review your work?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're not approving any of these 21. We're just saying, could you study them?
That's correct.
Okay. And from looking at some of them, I think you've already done some work on them, because if you go back in the council file, there's a lot of OCF numbers attached to them.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Krikorian.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that minor revision, Mr. Parks. I think it makes good sense. Colleagues, there's probably going to be items in this list that many of us are not going to want to support. There will probably be items in the proposals that the CAO brings forward to us when he reports back already that are going to be things that some of us are not going to want to support. I assume there will be assumptions in the mayor's proposed budget that comes out in April that some of us are not going to want to support. The important thing is that we have to have an honest discussion about what this city is prepared to fund and not fund, and what we need to do to get there. Despite improving economic conditions, we're still facing a major budget deficit for the coming fiscal year, and a budget deficit in excess of $200 million for the year after that. So we must have an honest discussion with the public, with the public employee unions, with the business community, with the people who vote for us here, about all options and their relative benefits and their relative challenges. And the only way we can do that is to have CAO consideration and analysis of these things and have a full report put before us. So, whether or not you support the particular suggestions that Mr. Parks is making, I think it's critically important that all of these be part of the discussion. We have to have the broadest possible discussion to be able to say, these are the trade-offs that the public is going to have to make through us. The public is going to have to make certain trade-offs. There's going to be either reduction in services or changes in other things. And if we don't have all of those matters before us, and if we don't have a real economic and fiscal analysis prepared by the CAO, then we're not doing what we need to do in order to have that kind of a thorough discussion about our budget. So I support this motion. I may or may not support the items that are contained in here. But for right now, let's get the information that we need to be able to compare them to the other bad options that are before us right now, and see which ones are going to produce the best result in a very difficult circumstance for our city.
And I might not support all of them.
Councilmember Zine, followed by Councilmember Alarcon.
Miguel, some of these issues, number one, the DROP program, isn't there a requirement that be audited annually to make sure that it's cost neutral?
Every 5 years, and we're in the process of doing that now.
Okay, so when you go down the list, the No Code 7 policy, I understand that was part of an issue where there was litigation, and they decided to do that to avoid continued litigation. The concern I have is if we open this up to all these issues, these city employees going from full-time to part-time, we don't want to create havoc and chaos within the workforce. At the same time, we obviously have to have a balanced budget. So how do we structure this where we can analyze but not cause undue stress to the employees who are working, serving the people of Los Angeles, and do it in a manner that is respectful to the employees and the taxpayers. But when I look at some of these issues, they've been brought up in the past. The issue of the 312 program, the constant staffing, some of these have already been through the hopper a number of times. But how do we assure those folks that are working in a positive fashion that this is not going to, that this evaluation is a positive evaluation to see alternatives and not to think that it's going to destroy your career if you're a career city employee? How do we do that? Because you have to deal with the unions, the representation, with all the bargaining units that we have to deal with. And I don't know how many coming up for negotiations, but when they look at this, I'm sure it's going to be a frightening scenario to many individuals, and we don't want to upset. We want them to encourage to do the job and do it in a proper fashion, except our responsibility to balance the budget. So you're walking a tightrope, and if you can respond to that.
I think it comes to just being transparent and providing clear analysis, and that whether you agree with or not, you could basically go through and understand the discussion around it. I think ultimately these things float out there. It's when your council chooses to adopt them or not to adopt them, then it finally brings resolution. I mean, over the last 4 years, we didn't just close the 80% of the structural deficit by magic. It was a consideration of a much longer list than just this, and every one of these items went into one of three buckets. Either they were done, they were not done, and your council said we're not doing that. For example, I had recommended twice to consolidate the Department of Disability. Your council said we're not doing that, and so guess what? It's not going to happen again. It's or a number of other ideas, or it's still on the list of things to be reviewed. That list of things to get reviewed is getting smaller and smaller because they've gone into the done list or the that we won't do list. So this simply adds to it, and then at the end of the day, your council will make a decision whether it wants to move forward. But it starts with transparent information. I think this is what this motion does.
Suzanne, please check your time.
I'm done.
Okay, Councilor Alarcon.
Transparency. Come on, Miguel. The public did not know that this amendment was coming forward. This is a very detailed amendment. They did not know. The unions did not know. We don't have an opportunity to hear what they say about this. The businesses did not know that we're talking about freezing or leaving the gross receipts tax alone when almost every one of us has introduced a motion to reduce the gross receipts tax. With the item, we're going through a discussion about an exclusive franchise issues with regard to our waste hauling system. Years spent taking time to move us in a direction. This asks to reject that entire process, shunning the environmental community that is pushing us to stop numerous trucks from coming down to pick up trash on the same street. This is essentially a declaration of war on so many entities that we've worked with to unify this city. I believe that this motion, in fact, I can disagree with the city attorney on this. He says this is barely, maybe I'm putting words in his mouth, but he intimates to me that it's barely passing the issues of notice to the public. So when you talk about presenting things in the full light, then let's hold this and let the public know about this motion so they can come in and be heard in public testimony. This is just not playing fair. The motion is very vague. The agenda item is very vague. It doesn't speak to specific cuts. It doesn't speak to specific targets of things that we're working on as we speak. Every one of us is working on one of these items. And yet this is going to put them all in under one basket and say consider it. Just because this I was looking at item 15, reject the currently approved recommendations regarding the exclusive commercial and multifamily solid waste franchising hauling system, implement the CAO's recommendations for a non-exclusive system. That's not a very non-biased position. You want to take a non-biased position, that's fine, but the truth is your recommendations were rejected because some analysis said that it would cost the city more money. So I think that this is undermining our process. This is undermining the will of the people to have presentations in the full light of day, and I would move that we hold this matter on the table and allow our constituents, allow business and labor to come forward to testify on whether they support this motion. Do I have a second? Okay, Mr. Zine seconds it.
Excuse me, Mr. President, just for clarification, Mr. Alarcon's motion is to continue the matter
yes.
to what day?
2013? 2014? What?
July 2nd?
Well, it has to be before the budget. Well, the next available scheduling is fine with me.
So the next agenda would be next Tuesday, the 9th.
Tuesday would be
I'm
great.
sorry, the 2nd. April
Yeah.
2nd.
That's fantastic.
Okay. We've got some clarity there. Councilor Rosendahl.
Yes, no offense to Mr. Zine or to Mr. Alarcon. All we're doing is what I used to do when I was the journalist guy, the who, what, when, where, and why. Get the facts out there, get the options out there, get the different discussions. You don't have to be scared or unions or threatened. There's none of that. Everybody's part of the solution. Everybody's part of the process. We are a family here. So I think more information, more knowledge, more understanding, more we reject, fine. More we accept, fine. It's just doing homework, as I hear it from Miguel and also from the chair of the Oversight Committee, Mr. Krikorian. It's just getting our information, getting our act together. So, and I love the unions. I know a lot about unions. I did more about unions in the private sector than anybody I know in the private sector. I fought for the workers. I believe in the workers. I just don't think this is relevant at this point. This is just getting information to make a decision. I'm certainly supportive of unions, but at the same time I want to vote yes on this just to get the information together. That's all I want to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Councilor Labange.
Councilman Zine, Dennis P. Zine. The mayor's team is putting together a budget as we speak, and it's going to be published next month. Are any of these items included in their review when they come back to Budget and Finance and go through the process? Are any of these items included in that, or is this not a part of that, which I think it should be part of that?
Out of respect to the mayor's budget process, I really don't feel comfortable discussing any element of the mayor's budget at this time.
Well, would this matter? Would these items be included? The mayor submits a budget, it goes through the review process, ultimately comes here to the body, it then goes back to the mayor. Are any of these issues, since the mayor submits the budget for review and it goes through Mr. Krikorian's committee, are any of these items, which I think is a simple yes or no, included in the recommendations from the mayor, since we're supposed to be working for the people and trying to come up with a budget that works? Or are they going to submit a budget and then all of a sudden it gets opened up again with these items? Shouldn't it be part of what the mayor is doing in his budget when he submits it, and they have these matters included and reviewed? Or is it going to throw everything off track and then we're going to review it again?
We're at the final stages of putting the budget together. I think the budget is what it's going to be. And without speaking specific to what the mayor's budget will include,
just generalities.
Some of these items have been in previous budgets. If you consider item number 7, freeze hiring citywide, stop filling non-critical vacancies, it's one of the major strategies that the city has adopted to reduce 5,300 positions. So that's been part of the ongoing process. Number 9, reduce full-time city worker positions where appropriate to part-time positions. Well, in the past, over the last 3 years, your council and the mayor has approved a part-time traffic officer program, which has resulted in a significant increase in revenue from the traffic officers' citations. So, some of these items are not new items that haven't been considered in the past. We'll work very hard to try to respond to this motion. I got to tell you that some of these things will be hard to close before the mayor's budget gets released. And before you get to consider it. The DROP program, for example, that's on a track. You know, we have to reach agreement with, we've been meeting with the pension system. It's their actuary that actually does the analysis on cost neutrality. That has to engage through a process. It's going to be probably the next several months before we actually have any real recommendation on that one. As Mr. Alarcon has stated, you know, your council has already made a decision on the exclusive franchising, and so our report on that's clear, and there's not much to add on that. We've also submitted reports on the gross receipts tax and the pluses and minuses of that. So,
but see, if you look at number 11, maximize civilianization, at the same time, we're talking about cutting the size of the city's workforce. So I'm just saying that, to me, it makes it simple to say the mayor's budget includes these items for review, for consideration. Instead of having that budget come forward, going through Mr. Corrigan's committee, and then going through and hashing out more to try and have in a condensed package where we can have these items included to decide with the mayor's budget if it's appropriate or not. It seems like we're going to have the mayor's budget come around, and then as that comes around, it goes through the review, and then we're going to go through another process, and we have a time frame to get it done. I'm trying to say, how do we consolidate these ideas, these concepts, into the budget, which is coming out in just a couple weeks?
So if this motion if this motion gets approved, our report would basically respond by putting things into three categories. The category of things we've already reported on and just summarizing what that has been. The category of things that could be considered in the short term, which my guess would be a very small list, and the category of things that's going to take significant more time to actually answer. And so that will be our first assessment as we move forward. The things that in the last section, they will be items that could be considered in the outer years, not just necessarily for next year.
Thank you. Councilor Labange, followed by Councilor Alarcon.
One of the same members, all of us should put a little motion together. I don't agree with many of these things, but there are ideas to discuss them now. As I said earlier, I think trash, city trash, which is very personal, all trash is personal, but what if we collected it 4 days a week? Would we save dollars and time on that? And all I would like to ask, Mr. CEO, study it and start in one zone, whether it's West Valley, East Valley, whether it's West LA or North Central or South or Harbor, pick one area, do it 4 days a week. You're putting trucks off the street. That's a green thing to do. At the same time, on the 4 days, just to say 4 days, I love 4 days. When I went to college, that's what they talked about, 4 days shift for the whole way. 4 days are good. I wish LAPD was all 4 days, but they're not. They have combinations, and it seems to be working because crime is down. That is a key there. So that is something that you don't have to rehash, and I think constant staffing is real important because there will be an earthquake. There will be an earthquake sometime, and we only have less than 1,000 firefighters right now working. We need to make sure there's constant staffing. But also, do we have an Office of Statistics other than a VOC? You know? Because I think an Office of Statistics that shows us what the numbers are so key. But I will put a little motion together, and I'll say the words that the chairman of the committee likes, that just study these as you go on, not to try to lock us into anything, but just to study, because this is the time. I look at you, Joe, young Joe right over there from the 50s. I wish I studied more on budgets in all the years that I worked here, because it's really effective. A budget is a guide to how the city's going to operate. A budget is a guide. And I just think it's important that all of us have this here and study and reject things that we don't like. But all this will be heard in committee in a lengthy fashion. Is that correct, Mr. CAO?
That is our process, yes.
That is our process. So I think that's a welcoming time. This is just a normal amendment that we put in. So I support the signature to just put it in discussion, but have full discussion as we go forward. And since there's another 53 seconds left on my time, and knowing there's a budget crisis, I'll sit down and save Kenny the energy.
Thank you, Councilor Barnes, for that generosity. Councilor Alarcon for the third time.
Yeah. Council members, I only rise to to reject Mr. Rosenthal's implication that my concerns were only relative to unions. I specifically said I want to hear from the business community about why we would want to freeze our consideration of the business tax. And everybody knows the only considerations we've had about the business tax is to reduce them. Why? So how would they react, Mr. Rosendahl, to freezing whether we increase, when studies have shown that reducing in some categories have produced revenue for the city? It's an important thing for us to consider their input at this time when we're introducing this motion. I don't want to place myself in a position of suggesting that I support a policy change to reject consideration of the business tax when I introduce the motion to eliminate it. So I want to hear about the environmentalists. I want to hear from the environmentalists if they want us to have the CAO reject their concerns or their input relative to the environmental benefits that would be gained from waste, the exclusive franchise waste hauling considerations. I want to hear from them. It's not just the unions. But I do want to hear from the unions on the issues of the privatization at the zoo. I'm not for that. But in any case, we're considering those things anyway, whether or not they're in this motion. But I'm not going to tie myself to any indication that we support these things, nor am I suggesting that I reject any of these things, because some of these things I do support. But I think that the problem I'm having here is that when we're talking about opening up the discussion for the public, nobody told them that this motion was going to be introduced, and so nobody's here. So why is it that we don't want to hear from them if we're trying to do things under the full light of day? The truth is, we're trying to do this motion in the darkness so that they are not here, so that they will not communicate their concerns, so they will not reject this notion. I don't believe this is the way that we open the doors to scrutiny. And by the way, what about the neighborhood councils? They should weigh in on all of this stuff, and we're not hearing from them either. Do you think this motion is going to be taken lightly by all these groups? No. It's an indication of what you believe. And I don't believe that we should do a lot of this stuff, and I absolutely don't believe we should do this motion without hearing from the public. And that's all I'm saying, is that we hold this matter until next Tuesday, giving the public a few days to consider whether or not they want to testify on this, and then I'm good. If they say whatever they say, I'm good with, and I'll figure out how I vote on this item. But I think to do this when nobody's in the audience is disingenuous at best.
Thank you. Councilor Rosendahl.
Just a final point. First of all, Richard, I feel the same way about the business community and the labor community and all the groups part of this process. All we're doing is putting on the table questions to get information so we can decide what we think we should do in conjunction with the mayor. Is that what we're doing, Mr. Miguel Santana?
You're not approving any one of these items. You're asking me to report back on them.
That's it. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Zine.
Will this then go to committee? The report back, will it go to Budget and Finance? Will it come back to the body? Will it go to committee? What's the process next?
When we submit our reports, if it has a budgetary implication, it would go to Budget and Finance, but it would also go to, my guess would be the Council President would assign some of these to the Policy Committee as well.
So there will be hearings that will take place on every single item that's listed in the motion?
Yes, there would be a public discussion of whatever report we submit, at minimum Budget and Finance Committee and the Policy Committee.
On every single item?
That is the process that we follow.
Thank you. Councilor Englander for the first time.
I just call for the question.
The question has been called. Let's open the roll. Just call the question. Okay. To make it very, very clear, we are just voting to see if we want to call the question. That's it. This stops the debate. Okay, so let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, what is in front of us?
Before council is Mr. Alarcon's motion to continue the matter until April 2nd.
So let's open the roll. Yeah. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
4 ayes, 6 noes.
Can you put me as a no there?
Now, what's before council is amending motion 11A by Mr. Parks Perry.
Okay. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 1 no.
Okay.
And now what's before council is item 11, the Budget and Finance Committee report as amended by motion 11A.
Okay. We have one more vote. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote. The item as amended. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 1 no.
Okay. Madam Clerk, what's in front of us?
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Post and referred.
That clears the desk.
Members, any announcements?
Yeah, I just want to let you know I support the Los Angeles Zoo, and I support the partnership that it may have, as we do with the Los Angeles Children's Museum. And the Children's Museum has a partnership. Partnerships are the key to the future due to the challenge dollar that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rosendahl.
So I'd like to just make an announcement. I quickly put on my military hat, having served during the Vietnam era as a psychiatric social worker, among other things, and also as an openly gay man that was in the military for 2 years during the Vietnam era. And today's action by the Supreme Court, I just want to publicly say all people should be treated equally. We all should have the same human and civil rights. I'm as good as anybody else, and I'm tired of being the second-class citizen in the greatest nation on earth. So my hope is the Supreme Court will appreciate us. I do have a domestic partner relationship that I'd like to get codified as well with Hedy El-Koti, my partner of the last 17 years. You know, gay people like straight people. Love is love, and it should cross all boundaries. So I hope the Supreme Court does the right thing and protect my basic civil and human rights. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Councilor Alarcon?
Council members, this is in lieu of an adjourning motion, which we will do at a later time. As you see, I'm joined by staff from the Homeboy Cafe downstairs. Pardon me?
I'll join you. I have the motion.
We have Father Boy.
I believe it's an announcement in preparation for an adjourning motion.
As you heard about an accident this weekend where a 9-year-old girl had to traverse horrible terrain climbing up hillside. Unfortunately, her father passed away in that accident. He was Alejandro Renteria, who is Alex in the Homeboy Cafe downstairs. We all know him. He was a very friendly young man, a single parent, and we're all devastated by his loss. He used to ask about my daughter when she was going through her stuff because he was a single parent and he wanted to make sure. In fact, she told me that he just texted her last week to see how they were doing. He was a very special person who had his own trials and tribulations. I would only ask that we do everything we can to help his daughter, who is in temporary foster care and who has no other family members who are in a position to take care of her. So I would ask that we work with Homeboy and help this young lady because her father was such a good friend to so many staff at City Hall.
Again, Councilman, this was an announcement, not an adjourning motion, correct? And adjourning motion will be followed up. That being said, adjourning motions on this side. Councilmember Zine.
Gertrude Jean.
Everybody please stand.
Gertrude Jean Kaplan Meyer passed away March 19th at 6 a.m. Passed away in her sleep in the comfort of her home. The wife of Walter, to whom she was married for 52 years. He preceded her in death by 19 years. She was born October 9th, 1911 in Massachusetts. She was the youngest girl of 6 siblings. Took great pleasure in reading books, listening to classical music, playing bridge, being active in the following charities: Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, the Ida Meyer Cummings Foundation, the Associates, Vista Del Mar, Jewish Home for the Aging, Los Angeles Philharmonic, Weitzman Institute, the Sisterhood of Temple Israel of Hollywood, Skirball Museum. Began traveling internationally at the age of 15, continued to visit every corner of the globe for the next 80 years. Survived by many relatives and friends. May she rest in peace. That's Gertrude Jean Kaplan Meyer.
Thank you, Councilmember Zine. Councilor Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Colleagues, I'd like to adjourn today in memory of Reno Marconi Sr., a longtime resident of San Pedro who passed away on March 22nd. Reno was born on November 18th, 1930 at his parents' dairy farm, which is located on the site today as we know as Harbor College. He married his wife Marjorie in 1952 and had a family of 4 children. Reno served his country in the United States Army from 1952 to 1954, was a longshoreman for 8 years and foreman for 37 years, finally retiring in 1996. Reno Marconi Sr. was active in his community. He was a member of the Mazzini Club, the San Pedro High Pirates Boosters, the ILW Pensioners, and devoted countless hours to his charitable works. Reno was preceded in death by his parents Eugenio and Amalia, 3 siblings, his son Reno Jr., who I knew as Big Dean, and grandson Anthony. He is survived by his wife, his loving children, 9 grandchildren, including one of my dear friends, Reno Marconi, and 13 great-grandchildren. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to the San Pedro Boosters Scholarship Fund. A visitation will be held today from 3 to 8 at McNerney's in San Pedro. The funeral mass will be held tomorrow at 10:30 at Mary Star of the Sea Church in San Pedro, followed by the interment at the Green Hills Memorial Park. Reno Marconi Sr., just a pillar in the San Pedro community, will truly be missed. May he rest in peace. Thank you, colleagues.
Seeing no other adjourning motions, this meeting is adjourned.